Yeah, already on air. Thank you very much. And welcome, Hoda Barakat. I am extremely pleased to meet you in person at last, as I have been following your work for quite some time, ever since I discovered your books in some bookstores where you do live and where you're at home. You went from Beirut to Paris, then back to Paris, and then back again to Paris, where you currently live. Where is your home? And have you ever felt like being in exile?
إيه أنا تركت بيروت لكي أتابع دراستي العليا في فرنسا لكني بعد حوالي سنة أو
Well, and then I went back to Beirut, and after a year or more, I returned to Beirut in order to leave Beirut again with my two kids, obviously. And that was towards the end of the civil war in Lebanon. During the entire civil war, I was in Beirut. And actually, I did feel like being in exile, because I thought that everything that was happening around me and inside me is something I did not understand, something that didn't have anything to do with me. And I stopped writing. I stopped talking. And that is what exile means. And of course, then I felt very, very honored by the attention that I received in Paris, in France. My work was translated into French. I didn't feel like a woman in exile there. I was free. I was a free woman. And I found it easy to adjust there. And besides Paris or France, awarded me two prizes in the field of culture to me as an Arab. And although I'm an Arab, usually the prize is awarded to French citizens only. And that award I received in Paris was a huge recognition to me as an author, as an Arab writer. And to me, that was an international recognition. I'm very grateful for that. And I would have been able to return back home. It was not forbidden to me, not at all. And at last, then I was welcomed in the Arab world, and I received the best prizes in the Arab world, literature prizes. And so the question you asked is, yeah, I do live in that language. That is my home. And the language is my home. The language is a big home to me. Beirut and Paris, well, don't play a role in my language. Maybe the Arab language might discourage you, but it's a literary language. Well, you write in Arabic. But if I get it right, you had a French education back in Beirut, and Arab you had to learn as a written language, as a language of writing. How did that happen? And is it correct at all? And in Arabic, are there things that are easier to say than in French for you? Well, I have written both in Arabic as in French. I have two books that I was ordered to write, like my presentations, the papers that I gave in French. Well, not just because I lived there, and not just because I lived in France or in Paris, but my education, as a matter of fact, is based on the French language. I received my education in French. So in other words, I was educated in French before I was educated in Arabic, and that is the reason why. But still, why do I write in Arabic? Why do I write my literature in Arabic? That is the question. I do so because I discovered myself as I was teaching myself Arabic and the Arab culture, which is something that was like repressed, what I didn't see around me. And that was a real treasure inside me, in my consciousness, in my awareness. And so I discovered this gradually. And I was feeling that while the Arab culture and the Arabic literature are being criticized, which bothers me. But as I discovered Arab culture and Arabic literature inside me, I decided to write only in Arabic, and I want to express myself only in Arabic because of that discovery. I teach in English, I write in French and in Arabic, but literature I produce only in Arabic. And this is what I wanted. This was my decision, and thank God that translations, while the world translates my work from Arabic into other languages, why should I renounce my language? My language is my home, it's my freedom, it's my body. If I say, it comes from inside me, it comes from my body, from my throat. Well, I don't know how many questions you will have, but I'm an Arab, I write in Arabic. And all languages that I know enrich my Arabic language and encourage me even more to write in Arabic. I read about Musil, and I learn about history. If somebody translates me into other languages, like in Chinese, for example, the Chinese don't know me, but I know them because I read about them. But there is something like a cloud that had been covering that had been covering Arabic literature and Arabic language and the Arab culture, and we have to get rid of that. Often I had the feeling that I was forced to say that I'm not a Muslim in order for people to think that I'm not racist versus other languages. No, well, Muslim or not Muslim, and Lebanese reject that. I'm not interested in religion at all. We are not interested in religion at all. But sometimes I feel obliged to say something like I'm not a Muslim. I'm an Arab. I'm an Arab woman. We have a various culture. We are different, and we are modern, if you want to put it like that. I've spent much time to learn an answer to your question and to correct those who have misunderstood it. That might be not your mistake and not your problem, not your error. The error might reside somewhere else. It has been said that we are not able to write in our language. But it's not a problem of the Arab language. I have nothing against the fact if somebody writes in another language. Everybody should articulate themselves in the language they feel comfortable in. And one day, well, let me tell you this anecdote. I was in an official institution, in an official authority, a foreign authority, in the office of a foreign institution. And there was a woman who says to me, she was waiting, she says, Allahu Akbar. And the people were running away in shock. They were scared. And I kept sitting there. I mean, she was my friend. Well, at least I perceived friendship in her words. So one woman in a big room said, Allahu Akbar, in a room 5 times as big as this room here. I think it was in Italy. And I said to myself, well, how should I ever say Allahu Akbar? Of course, you read me. And I said, well, Allahu Akbar. I said to the repressor. I said, remember that there is somebody else who is stronger, who is bigger than you. Don't oppress me. You are not the most important person. And that's what I explained to the people around me. If I say something nice, if I want to say something nice, I say Allahu Akbar, because that fascinates me. I don't understand that fright. Well, I don't want to heal you from this scare, from this fright of Allahu Akbar. I simply want to explain to you. And the people around me in that room, they started crying because they understood that they had wronged people. Everybody can say that. To me, well, that's a gift for you. Simply say Allahu Akbar and don't worry about it, because people don't know. The propaganda actually propaganda has an impact on people, on the dialogue, on the communication between people, and that's really sad. It is sad that you feel obliged to say something or not to say something, that you're obliged to say, I'm Christian, my culture is Arabic. And if you say Allahu Akbar, and I'm not the only one saying Allahu Akbar. Let's take Kulthum, for example, who says Allahu Akbar in her concerts, the Egyptian singer, and thousands of people listen to Kulthum. And Assad, another singer, did the same. I've tried to correct that situation. I've tried to provide information on that. We are not like that, I said. But now we have to say who we really are. We have to say that we are not like that. We have to say what we are like. We want to tell people who we really are. And thank God I'm saying here that there is enlightenment in the Arab world, that there are big institutions saying that you have to do that, that we need to do that, that we need to support the Arabic language. We haven't done enough in that field in the past. Now we need to do more. And we need to reactivate our language. We need to modernize the language. That is really important. The Germans, the French, and so on and so forth, they supported their literatures. And today there are great institutions in the Arab world that have started taking care of Arabic language and Arabic literature. And they make a serious effort with a lot of willingness and with a lot of support, and with a visionary attitude toward the Arabic language and Arab culture. And you can see the results. Well, you deepened your work as a writer when you went back to Paris after the end of the Civil War. So since then, half a dozen or even more books have been published, which have been translated into many languages, into English, into French, in many languages, and not into German, not yet. And you've met with great resonance internationally, but also, of course, in the Arab world, where you have received many awards. Many awards, the Naguib Mahfoud Prize in Cairo, the Al-Uwaywid Prize in Dubai, if I got it right. And now you've received the Sheikh Zayed Book Award in Abu Dhabi for a book published in 2024 by al-Adab in Beirut. In English, the book is called Hind, or the Most Beautiful Woman in the World. And I would like to ask you to briefly tell us what the book is about. And then I would like us to listen a brief excerpt in order to hear how that sounds in Arabic. Well, I don't want to dwell on why the novel has not been translated into German yet. I have an important publisher in the Arab world, that al-Adab. And maybe, since I came to Frankfurt, there are a few publishing houses that are interested, but the Sheikh Zayed Literature Award in Abu Dhabi is not just any name. It's a key institution. It's not just the award. It's not just the prize. It's more than that. And the Sheikh Zayed Literature Prize, well, there is an interest actually, and you know the Sheikh Zayed Literary Award better than me, and there is an interest in translation. But I would like to point out that German publishers, from what I've seen, from what I've heard, well, I know German publishers, and the German publishers knew me in part, and I knew them in turn. And I was also invited to the Wissenschaftskolleg in Berlin. I spent a year there. And of course, to me, that was a huge recognition. That was a gift from Germany to me, from a different Germany, basically. To me, well, to me, Germany has always played an important role. And I don't know why I was rejected. I also rejected the idea for some time to be translated into German because the view and the take on Arabic culture and on Arabic language was not that positive, and they thought we were all the same. The Arabs are like this, the Arabs are like that, Arab culture is like this or like that. And this why I was quite reticent. So basically, the German publishers that were advised by those whom worked in the field of Arabic language said, okay, he's in favor of the regime in Syria, and he is against the war in Syria. I didn't want that. I reject that strictly. Literature is literature. Today, Germany needs to play a role alongside other European languages, Belgian. Well, the rest is self-explanatory, I would say. Today there is an interest. Now there is an interest in translating my work into German. There is a publishing house that respects me and my story, and that also respects the Arabic language. And my book will be translated from Arabic into German, as it happened in the past, and as had been offered to me. Well, it's partly our fault that all of this happened, because Arab authors accepted those conditions. I rejected those conditions, so therefore there is this delay, but everything is fine now, and I hope it will stay like that. Well, this novel that you mentioned now, that you introduced now, and I will read from it in a minute. Well, this novel is my most recent novel. Previously, I had 6 novels. I have written 6 or maybe even 7 novels and 2 plays, and another book that was published in France, that was translated into English, and that will be published soon. So what did I want to say with this novel? Well, these novels represent my take on the world, on the Orient. I want to communicate something with my work. Well, let me come back. Once my German translation has been read, I might come back to Frankfurt Book Fair. Would be easier if people had already read my book, but just very briefly, I would like to say something. This novel is about beauty. About beauty is viewed by humans, about the change in perception of beauty through history, and about a wrong memory calls back memories of something that might not have even been there. It's about disfigured beauty. Well, I compare beauty and disfigured beauty. I talk about a woman, a girl that was born as a beautiful girl. She was born after the death of her sister. That was very beautiful. And who died 2 years before she was born, and she didn't even know that sister had existed. And then she fell ill, and she started looking almost like a monster because she was apparently disfigured by this illness. And then she discovers this world in a different way. That girl had been liked by everyone, but all of a sudden her relationship with the world, with her mother, that changed completely after she became ugly. So what is ugliness? What is beauty? We are the most beautiful creatures. We are all the most beautiful creatures in the world. The way we are seen and the way we see each other. Maybe somebody who loves you says, you are the most beautiful person in the world. And that person is right. That person doesn't even lie. And if something happens, if like they split up, he might say, well, I saw her as the most beautiful woman, but now she is the ugliest woman, but you have always stayed the same. Like even the relationship we have with ourselves, with our memory, with our home, our recollections, that's all the same. And in that novel, it's about memory and about beauty. And that's a very important, that's a very sensitive relationship between joy and beauty on the one hand, and between the fear of being left, of being abandoned. Sometimes we ask ourselves, who is it who talks? Who is it who speaks in this text? Is it Hind or is it Hanadi? Or when and how did Hanadi become Hind? Hind become Hanadi? Because her mother decided that she had become ugly, hiding her and comparing her to her dead sister. Do we see our own dead in our mirror? Are we the dead that we see in the mirror? So how are people treated at all? Sometimes I find it difficult to talk about these topics. It's difficult to talk about this if somebody hasn't read the text yet. I don't write in a classical, in a traditional way. I don't write about topics I'm not interested in. Those who read me maybe will reflect with me about the text, about my ideas, about my thoughts. And maybe if you read my texts, you feel that I'm not a writer that simply conveys a joyous or a beautiful message. No, I only try to motivate readers, male and female readers, to think along with me, to reflect together with me. That is my job, that is my task. I don't want to teach anything. I don't want to educate anyone with my writing, with any buzzwords, the liberation of the woman. No, it's a process. Women are emancipated, become emancipated, and women are freed through the process of writing. I accept. Well, there are no big buzzwords that I want to sell to anybody. I'm fine. And somebody even laughs about me. Somebody even laughs about this. I would now suggest that we read a very brief passage, a very brief excerpt from the book that you will read out in Arabic. Well, just the very first page in order to get an idea of how that sounds. Well, for those who don't hear or who don't understand Arabic, you can also simply listen to the tune of the Arabic language, to the melody of the Arabic language. I didn't return to this country out of love or longing. No, I came back because God's wide world spat me out. Here I was, lying on the sand where the waves come in, like one of those dying whales beached on the shore, half submerged, with their rigid fins visible above the surface of the water. I mulled over this scene, and then I felt my nose begin to tremble. The sweet, soft breeze moving across my face set my nostrils quivering harder. I coughed up the stuff in my throat, stood up, and walked. Well, yes, more or less. The sand on the seashore, the image of the whales, or the bank of this river, there is not much difference. There is no water to speak of in the photo, and there is none in this riverbed either. The name of this area is the river. Likely there was a real river here at some point in time. There is also a willow tree here, an odd one, an emaciated trunk, and one branch that's still green and alive. Sitting beneath it, I wonder in some awe where the roots of this willow could possibly find any moisture. At least here the boy's stones don't chase me, and I don't have to deal with stray dogs barking at me. And here I've got the shelter of my mother's home. Being far from home is no easy thing, even if the idea of returning to this country came into my head now and again, regularly, if not often. It bounced ahead of me on the road of life like a ball I could toss away with playful enthusiasm. I found out about my mother's death a month after she died. No news reached me at the time, so I had no idea if her home was unoccupied. Not until I knocked on one of the door panels, pounded actually, because there was no doorbell. Not hearing any voices or commotion inside, I rattled the door and pushed. It swung open without any resistance. This river has no natural channel carved out by running water. In fact, it's just a length of concrete. And down the middle of it runs a long, shallow depression that could allow some water to flow if there were any water. Water coming from the sky or water from melting snows coming off the heights that are so far away we can't even see them from there. But people always tell us they are mountains and their crowns are covered in snow. And since there is such scant water, the wide channel built for it is just a road now, as if the cars and trucks speeding along in both directions are on two banks of an imaginary river. It's a river, but it might as well be an autostrade. No one follows me there. And I can stay for hours and hours until nightfall. Any night, whatever the weather or the season. It's not a place where people would come for a stroll or to sit and enjoy the nature around them or to exercise. And then there is nothing to draw anyone here. Nothing to occupy them in this place. It's only me here. I come here to get away from the Lord's creatures before the brains in my head were twisted by that damn disease which turned me into a wandering disability. I was the most beautiful creature of all. In the country, outside the country, in my homeland, or among all of those who had left it. My mother used to say, in this world that God created, there is nothing more beautiful than my daughter. There is no one prettier than Hind, than Hanadi. No one more beautiful than me. That's what my mother used to say. There is no one more beautiful than my daughter. Those are the words she began to use a little later on, no longer giving the name of this daughter of hers. She wasn't lying, my mother, when she bypassed the name. Not lying, but faking it. And there is a big difference between lying and pretending. I call where I'm sitting the riverbank. Things need names, even those things we don't see. There is no water in the river, but it's definitely a watercourse. A majra, yes, a river with a course you can see. Even if what I see in front of me are only black trickles. Probably sewage, majari. Makes sense. Majari is the plural of majra, after all. As for me, seeing this doesn't upset me. Except just next to those black trickles, I can see a dead cow. The carcass swollen and the legs poking straight up into this blue sky around us. That's what makes this place obscene. Well, I don't speak Arabic, unfortunately. So when preparing this discussion, I needed to read the brief excerpt that exists in English, around 50 pages. And from this excerpt, I took away that in this book, it's about a hero, it's about a narrator with a multiple fractured identity, or maybe with one broken identity. She experiences this transformation of her body after a disease, which turns her from a beautiful child to an adult apparently disfigured by illness. Well, apparently she's a disfigured person. And the story is set in two places that might be identified as Beirut and Paris, but these places are never mentioned, at least not in the excerpt I was able to read in English. And there are other persons that there is a mother, there is a friend, a dog, a sister that died, but that are kept in the vague. So everything is left very vague, very uncertain. You never know what it's really about. But it's only an excerpt of a book, and this excerpt is pervaded by a lot of uncertainty. Is uncertainty or vagueness the right word, or would you choose a different term? Could you reformulate the question? Well, the atmosphere that the book provokes is that of a comprehensive uncertainty, of vagueness. It's all very vague, not certain. You never really know. Well, it's hard to grasp anything. Well, neither the heroes, neither the persons in the book, neither the readers. So you have no kind of certainty you can grasp to, you can hold on to. Is uncertainty the right word in order to describe the atmosphere you meant to evocate, or would you choose a different word? And if yes, which one? Look, in general, I think that life itself is uncertain and vague. There is no certainty at all. There is nothing like a true final certainty. Life is changing all the time. The life can open up. Sometimes life closes down everything and we suffer defeats. Well, I don't write about historical events. I'm interested in change. I'm interested in the change in people. I'm interested in how people turned from normal human beings into violent beings, for example, into how people are able to turn from pacific beings to peace-loving beings, to warriors. And that's that change is what I'm really interested in. How do people change? How does it come about that the world change? How does the world change? How do human beings change along with the changes in the world? The world around us changes all the time, and we as human beings, we don't manage. Sometimes we are stuck, basically. We are stuck. We don't move. We don't feel the future. We don't step into the future. We don't reach the future, and there actually is an uncertainty all around us. But we should never give up, all the same. We should not lose hope. The world is moving into a direction that might make us lose hope. But we should never lose hope. We need to stay full of hope. We need to stay optimistic. Human beings have become tired, and we need those values. We need that optimism. We need that hope. And there is a lot of experience in that field, and we need to look ahead. We need to step forward. Like, young people are almost lost. A lot of young people don't have values. I see that this period of time is a very special period of time. It's a very hard period of time. We need to write about it. And if you don't write about it, if you don't see this, I think that you've missed something. Once I heard a lecture that was really important to me, and it was about the fact that everybody, that all of us as human beings need to think about the way that we want to choose, about the direction we want to move into. We need to think about what we really want. Americans, for example, like those Americans that saw the Afghans in some pit after they tried to flee. And the military in the airplane took it along, and we saw how it happened. Like the people were hanging on to the airplane, and they were still left behind. That's that's a very interesting image. Or even if you think about what you see in Gaza, or what you used to see in the past, if you think about all those images. I think that Germans have started to see, or let me put it the other way around. I think that the Germans, which do have a very heavily burdened memory after the Second World War, I think that Germans had a hard time thinking about what happened. But we need to give people new chances, and sometimes sometimes time gives us the opportunity to think about ourselves and to change. We need to respect each other. We need to respect us mutually. That is what really matters, and that is true for all human beings. I wrote a play, for example, and in one part of that play, the Nazis well, the play is set in Italy. Well, they try well, they made me think about the Jewish history, and I wanted to understand why the Nazis had done that. And I also studied the history of France. I learned when France won the war. Or at the end of the First World War, as Clemenceau said. After the armistice, when the defeat was admitted. Well, and one of the French generals said, I want that the Germans kneel down, that they fall down on their knees now. We need to get them on our knees. This is what he said. But I'm not going to accept that. Well, he says he's not going to accept that Germany will ever rise again. Germans need to put on their knees, and they need to stay on their knees. And Hitler, after he came back from an encounter, he stayed in his car. Well, I don't know whether you understand what I'm trying to say, because it's a very complicated image, like he rode his car like on a bed of roses, on a bed of flowers. It's like we, civilized people, sometimes we inherit violence. How is violence inherited? How is violence passed down? And when it comes to the Second World, I needed to see everything. I wanted to see how the Germans forgot about their philosophers. How could the Germans forget their philosophers? How could the Germans forget their writers? How could they forget the language of Goethe, which was replaced by Heil Hitler? How could that happen? How could that come about? How was that possible? Or like the Jews, like what they had to suffer in Europe as human beings. And my life is part of that, because I live in Europe. My education, my upbringing is part of that. And I grew up surrounded by a civil war where brothers and sisters kill each other, where mothers didn't know what to do when her firstborns killed her secondborns, and these were the people around me. It's not about a black blonde. These were other Lebanese. These were people in my country who killed each other, who slaughtered each other. In the US, I went to university and I wanted to find out what had happened to black people in the United States. And I was asked, why do you write with a male voice? The people in your novels are always a male, but I'm not just a woman. When a man suppresses a woman he loves, I truly ask myself, why does that man oppress her? What disease does he suffer in order to suppress a woman? Or Ahlil al-Hawad, for example. Well, in that novel of mine, it's not the woman who speaks. That is true. It's a man, it's a male voice that speaks up. Well, and you asked me about the atmosphere in my book. You asked me about the atmosphere in my novel, and that is the exact problem. I'm always uncertain. The lack of certainty tells me what could happen, and this is my topic, this is my aim, this is my goal. This is exactly what I want. I want to have that uncertainty. I hope that I was able to answer your question. Yes, you did. Well, that doesn't make it easier, but it doesn't need to get easy. Well, you've said it, you've mentioned it very briefly, that sometimes some of your heroes are male, others are female. Do you adjust your language depending on the point of view, depending on the perspective, the prospect of the main hero? Yes. In each and every novel that I wrote, I used a different language. I'm not always the same person. I don't always use the same style in my writing. Well, each novel tells a story, and each novel has a different background where it begins from. Sometimes the novel starts with a voice I can hear at night, for example, of a woman, of a man, of anyone, of somebody who tries to tell me something. I listen. Well, I hope that you don't get worried about me now. Of course, well, I listen, well, I hear noises. You don't get worried about me because I hear voices at night, but I'm not talking about myself here. I'm trying to tell you something different. I think that my characters are even more real than myself. Well, my characters are not trivial characters. They are the characters taken from real life. They might even be important. I'm not sure. Well, nobody oppressed me. My books were not censored. My books have never been banned. I never was in prison. I'm not a fighter or anything. I live a normal life, but the life of my characters is related to me. There is a relationship between my characters and my life. Well, maybe I can tell you how I found these characters, and as you can see, I find it extremely difficult to answer your question because there is no one answer that comprises everything, that includes everything. There is no truth that I need to defend here. Let me just say that each and every novel has its own characters and its own style and its own properties. Would you like anything else about my last novel, maybe? Would you like to ask more about my last novel? And as I was saying, each and every novel has its own history, has its own story. I could tell you more about my last novel. Would you like to hear that? Yes, of course. As a matter of fact, after the death of my mother, my brothers and sisters were at home, and they distributed pictures. Like when the father of the mother died, they share pictures, they share memories, they look at the pictures. And I was in Paris back then. Or rather, when I came back to Paris, I was reminded of a picture, or I was reminded of the fact that one picture had been like forbidden because my sister that had died, Salma, we didn't see very much in pictures. And when I remembered that picture, when I was reminded of that picture, I remembered that that child looked like me at that age, because I also saw a picture of myself at that age, and I saw that there were similarities between her and me. And then I asked myself, where is that picture? Because I only remembered the picture, I only remembered the photograph. And that photograph was like a forbidden, it was hidden from outside. Nobody should see it. My mother was supposed not to see it because she was crying all the time because she had lost her daughter. Well, she wasn't really sick. She hadn't been ill. She had suffered like a loss or a lack of liquids, and she had died. And I asked myself, but who am I? Am I Selma or am I Huda? And why did my mother love me so much? I mean, my mother, she had that immense love for me. Did I live my own life, or had I lived Selma's life? And my mother, of course, she hadn't wanted Selma to die. And that is the first voice. Like Selma wants to talk to me, Selma wants to reach out to me. And then, of course, afterwards, the course of the novel changed. And I projected my take on Beirut. I focused myself on Beirut, and I asked myself, does Beirut resemble me, or doesn't it resemble me? And then I also thought about the ugliness of Hanadi, of that girl that had turned ugly, or could I maybe say, is Beirut the most beautiful city in the world? Are the Lebanese the most beautiful, the most important people in the world? Can I say that? Does that lead to a feeling of superiority, of violence towards others? Could that become destructive? Could that have a negative impact on others if I said something like that? And I don't want to talk about myself here. I don't like to talk about myself. I just want to place it. I just want to explain what happens to you. I grew up in a strictly Christian family. And Malakuti at that heart is a novel which has not been translated into German yet. In that novel, I actually mentioned it. I wrote about the family that always constantly talks about Lebanon as the perfect country, about Lebanon that is different, that one should be, that the main character should take pride in Lebanon, in this wonderful country, which does not match reality. That is, the history is alienated because the Christians were also part of the civil war. And to me, that civil war was unavoidable because every area, every region in Lebanon was moving toward conflict and toward rejection of the other, toward negating the others. And this is how people grew up in Lebanon. This is how they felt themselves. It was always at the expense of the other. And of course, Beirut was part of that. And Beirut also fell into that bog. And of course, I was a rebel in Islam. I grew up with the nuns and with the church. I had very strict the parents. But then I woke up. The Arab language helped waking me up. And then I attended a Lebanese university, although I was also immatriculated in a French university. I got to know the guys that were my age. I got to know the guys at the Lebanese university. Those guys were Muslim. And I fell in love with a Muslim guy, and I actually got married to him. And I saw him with two different eyes. Well, I'm not only a product of a Christian family. I didn't stay the product of my parents, of my Christian family. Automatically, without much ado, without even thinking about it, I started seeing things in a more objective way, and I never stopped asking questions. I never stopped asking myself questions. I constantly kept rephrasing everything, and that had an impact on my awareness, that had a huge impact on my writing in my novels. Ahl al-Hawad, that novel, is about a man that kidnaps, that abducts a woman because he loves her. He moves to a different area in Lebanon. And the man all of a sudden has started to change his thinking, and you don't even need to talk about politics. It's hard to explain all of that without having read the book, and these are the things I think are important in my life. Well, I also want to entertain you here, of course. Thank you very much. Well, of course, there is a lot more to be said about your work, which is that is multifaceted, that is extremely complex, with a lot of uncertainties. You need to explore, which makes it interesting. It's your work is available in many languages, in French, in English, and many other languages, and it will become available very soon in German. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for the chance I had to get to know you. I hope to see you again, and I would like to thank you a lot for your audience. Thank you very much to everybody here in this room. Thanks